absolute value is a very, very simple idea, okay? But then again, some of you know better than others that sometimes simple ideas can give birth to very, very deep implications and complicated, ramifications. So, yes, you can wait until I'm finished. So, let me define for you what absolute value is. I'm going to give you a variety of definitions that go from sort of simplest, most common sense, and then I'm going to sort of filter down into more complicated abstract definitions. Okay? So here's my first definition. Definition number 1. Okay? Definition number 1. Absolute value, and this is kind of where the name comes from, is the positive value of a number. That's it. The positive value of a number. That is the simplest definition I can give you. Okay? So, examples. What does this mean? If I say, what's the absolute value, and here's the notation for you. It's 2 long lines, kind of like parallel lines. It's like those 2 markers, but separated out. The absolute value of 5, that's how I read that out, is equal to 5. Whoa, mind-blowing. I told you I would start with a simple one, okay? Let's go again. How about the absolute value of -3? Now, I just want the positive value of that, okay? So therefore, it's 3. When you are first introduced to negative numbers in the topic of integers in Year 7, okay, we call integers, another name for them is directed numbers. Directed numbers. And this idea is important because it explains that numbers, they start from just counting, right? And thinking, how big is something, or how much of it do you have? But then it expands this idea that numbers are not just about quantity or value or size. They can go in certain directions, okay? Integers can go in one of 2 directions, positive or negative, okay? So another way of saying this is, what's the positive direction equivalent of whatever number you're giving me, okay? So, positive value of number, that's pretty simple. You can put these together in operations. It's not that complicated. Let's think about this, for example. Let's do 3 minus... There we go. 3 minus the absolute value of -1. And by the way, this is something that should have been mentioned to you throughout your years since you learned what integers are. Okay? But there is a difference between this minus sign and this minus sign. Even though informally we kind of say 3 minus -1, right? And we'll even call that -1. Minus is an operation. It says do something, right? But here, like this negative number and this negative number, they're actually meant to be adjectives, not verbs. It's trying to describe that number. And in fact, your calculators even distinguish between these. If you get your calculators out now, your calculators actually have a negative button on them. You should find it, at least on mine. It's on the left-hand side. It's a minus sign, a hyphen, in a pair of brackets. Okay? So when you put that on, you might see you get a short hyphen as opposed to the minus, which is a slightly longer one. It's like 2 whole pixels longer on my screen, okay? So there's a minus button and a negative button. Now, because so many people don't really get that there's a difference, your calculator, if you put minus where you should have put negative, it'll kind of get what you mean, okay? But let's try now, because it's so important to this idea, let's try to be a bit more specific and accurate with our language. Well, the difference is not all that much, though if, for example, I haven't tested this, but if I go 3 and then -1, it'll say syntax error because negative is not an operation, right? You need an operation between 2 numbers. And 3, -1, what's the thing between them, right? Does that make sense? So for example, you could say 3 minus -1, and that should give you 4 as you expected. Okay. Positive 4. All right, so now coming back to this. So I'm going to read this out as 3 minus the absolute value of -1. Okay, it's a simple example, so we'll just, like any other kind of brackets, we'll just go from the inside out. 3 minus, what's the absolute value of -1? 1. So this is 2. No big deal, okay? That's definition number 1.